Okay, starting off the lap here, coming into turn 1, we're going to be looking to brake around that 80, 75 point. If we slow it down here, I hop on the brakes around here. That's around 75 to 80, closer to 80 meters, because now the cars are pretty heavy. Going to be turning in. You only want to touch this curb a bit. I grabbed a little much here, but it doesn't cost too much, as long as your line is good. Then using the whole curb out here. First corner is second gear as well. Now as we go down the mountain, you'll be seeing we're going up into 5th gear, don't bother with 6th gear, and then we're going to be braking right at this, just before this pavement, because the track temp is at 53 degrees, it's very hot, so we're braking just before here. If the tracks are cooler, like around 30 or so, you can be braking a little later, like towards the end of where this pavement is, but otherwise we're braking just a tiny bit before, going down into 3rd gear, so downshifting twice, and then holding as tight as possible on around this curb without actually going onto the curb, because you hit the curb, unsettles the whole car. That's not going to be good. Now going wide, we're going to be getting, you see, hold the power pretty high through this corner. Go full power. I just had to lift off a bit to make sure we weren't hitting the wall there, so you don't lose too much time if you have to do this, but it's not optimal. And then you can use the whole curb here, but you need to make sure you're either going fully on this curb or you're not using it at all, because if you just touch it a bit, you're going to be unsettling the car too much and it can cause a spin. And as we come down towards the cutting, going to be looking to the right here. This is our turn-in point. And then just as we get around the corner here, just as we reach this little apex, you could call it, we're hopping onto the brakes around 40% or so. And we're just going to be braking, aiming towards the tyre power board, and then as we get over this little bump, it just gets a little higher here where the car goes over. We're going to be starting releasing the brake. We're going to be turning in a lot. You really got to crank the steering, so don't be afraid to turn. If you have a look how much I'm turning, this is our peak turning. And then once you pull the car in onto the white line here with your left tyres, you're going to be putting throttle, and you're going to be going relatively wide here. You can exit a little wider than I did, because you can see the rear left tyre actually, it lost some contact to the ground and actually spun a bit. So that's not optimal once again, but didn't cost too much. Now, going over this turn here, you just want to hold tight. And then as you go over, you can just open up the steering bit. If you're turning too much while going over this bump, that's when the rear is going to step out and you're going to spin. So now heading to quarry. Going to be using this extra space on the left, because you can go a little tighter and go full throttle, but you're going to be losing too much time on the exit. You want to maximize your exit here, because you're going to be, it's a pretty long run over to the top of the hill. So just turning in when the track is at its widest here, you see the wall, the Fujitsu wall just goes out a little bit, then comes back in. That's what we're going to be turning in. We're going to keep it pinned. Don't touch this curb on the inside, it'll be game over. If you touch it, you'll just understeer right into the wall. And then on exit here, try opening up the steering as early as possible. If you hold too much, the rear is just going to step out. And then you can drive over this curb here, no problem. Now, going over the little crest here, you can see we're just aiming just so that we're reaching this part, this little extra tarmac here, basically a straight line over. So if we go cockpit, you're going to be seeing we're coming right out of quarry. And then we'll be going, sitting around the middle of the track, and then we're right back to turning in. We're going to reach this here. Don't really want to be all the way to the inside, because then you won't be able to get out to the outside quick enough. But you want to be pretty close to the inside, and aim straight. You're going to be putting your right tires over the white line here, and you're going to be keeping it flat. You see I actually lifted here a bit, just to make sure I made the corner. But in lower temps, you should be able to go flat out very easy. So it's going to be flat on this turn here. We can see our turning in point is basically once we're reaching the tarmac here. Once we're reaching the tarmac and your right tires are going over there, you have to try keep one smooth motion through the whole turn here. As you can see, my steering, it's turning left, and then crank more left, and then bring it back. So you want to try to be as smooth as possible, scrub off as little speed as possible is the main goal. Now on exit, you can go over this curb just fine. You can see I just went over it a little bit, no worries. But the main thing is that you're putting your tires over the white line here. Just again, the white line should be realistically just in the middle of the car. So that's what it looks like on the cockpit. So now as we head down to Skyline, oh sorry, not Skyline, McPhillamy Park, we're going to be, once we're reaching and driving over this curb, that's our turn-in point, we're going to be going over the hump, and then as we go over the hump, we're going to be lifting off, lift, and then as we're reaching this curb here, you do not want to hit this curb too early. If you're hitting this curb early in the first half of it, let's say, that's just going to push you wide and understeer. But if you end up turning in a little late and you're hitting the curb around here, that should be fine. You just drive over it, you'll make the corner just fine. Just one more time. Turn in once reaching over the curb, you lift, and then back full power. Now with this curb, you're either using all of it or none of it. You can see here I've got my tires onto the curb pretty comfortably, then got back off. Now, coming up to Skyline, we're going to be looking at this line here. If you want to play it safe, you can start dragging the brake just as you reach here, but you can see we start hitting the brakes a little after, and your main marker, it's a little hard to see, but just as when this part of the extra tarmac gets at its widest, you can see it goes out a bit. Around where it goes out wide is your turn-in point, and you can see I'm not holding much brake. I'm holding around 30% brake, holding that, and then you can see I'm even releasing as I'm turning in. It's a very, very tricky sequence here. So you're going to be holding brake a little bit, releasing it, and you see we're down into 4th gear. So what it looks like in 1 time speed, brake, and as we're straightening up, that's when we're shifting down into 4th gear. So now, as we're going down here, I'm releasing, and now you want to get close right here. You want to be going as straight as possible when you're hitting this apex. If you're not, if you're turning too much, you're just going to go off to the right. And then, as I'm straightening up before reaching the curb, you see the brake pressure picks up a lot. So we're going to do all the slowing down. We're going to shift down a gear. That's what that throttle is. That's just the auto blip. So we're shifting down into 3rd when we're reaching this curb. We're eating all of the curb here. We're releasing the brake because we're actually turning. And an important sequence you need to remember once again, once we get off this curb, we're looking at a straight line. And then we're putting the brake back on. And now we're going to be shifting down into 2nd when we're holding tight here. Just hold tight around the curb. And then you can see I actually put some brake on again, just as we're reaching the dipper, just to get the car turned in. You can see my steering is very aggressive here. You can only get away with this kind of steering at the dipper, where I'm just a dab of the brakes. You can actually see I was on the throttle a bit, just bringing it around the corner. Bit of throttle, then back on the brakes, chuck the car into the corner. Main thing is you're aiming, for a good lap at least, you're aiming to actually hit that wall just. And you see, right now it looks like I'm going to hit that wall, but because it's the dipper, you go down and you understeer past it. And especially in the BMW, you get pushed wide a lot because it's a long wheelbase and you've got a lot of weight at the front there. That's going to force your car wide. So you're going to chuck it in, just miss that. You can see I got pretty close on this attempt. And then on the exit, you can just drive over this just fine. And then use the space on the left here. So now what we're going to be looking is to go hold tight on the left here. And then just as this orange wall, coat tire wall, turns to white, we're going to start trail braking, and we're going to be going down into 2nd eventually to get the forest elbow. But what's incredibly important is that right now we're in 4th gear. You may end up in 3rd gear, just hold it in 3rd gear. We're in 4th gear, we're going to shift down into 3rd gear. We're holding the brakes a little bit, because we're turning, we can't do a lot of braking obviously. We're in 3rd gear now. And then as we straighten up, we're reaching this part where it goes to the Falcon Blue wall, and that's when we're going to put the brakes up a lot. We're aiming straight, as you can see. Now you can do some braking, and this is about the max that you're going to get away with. Any more than this, you're activating the ABS too much, and you're just going to understeer off into the wall. So very important is that you're bringing the car straight, and as soon as you're getting the car straight here and you're aiming for the outside here, that's when you got to put that braking on. So we're down into second gear. Now we're starting to turn in, and our apex is just around here where the high part of the wall becomes low. And you can get a little tighter here. You can get away with going a little tighter, but first of all, you don't gain much and you risk a lot, especially for a 12-hour race. So once we're reaching this apex, you can see I'm picking up the throttle pretty quickly. Since we're going down the front, there's a lot of weight on the front, so you just got to be careful with how much throttle you put. Because if you put it on too early and you're not steering enough, you're just going to go straight into that wall. But you can see here, I made it pretty comfortably. We'll just play this in 1x speed. You can have a look what it looks like. Look at the inputs in real time. Heavy braking, turning in, picking up on the throttle, being patient, and then we're out the corner nice and fine. No worries. So now as we head down on the Conrod Straight, we're going to be reaching the kink. You see right now we're in 5th gear, going to be shifting into 6th gear just before reaching the little kink here. We're going to go wide, just make it easy for ourselves. We don't have to, but it just adds unnecessary risk. Just make it easy. And now you're going to be lining up the car on the right here. We're looking at the 150 board, that's your marker. And you can see I even actually go to full braking here. It's not quite optimal, but at this corner, you don't actually lose much because you're going very fast, it's very heavy braking, and you're actually starting to go uphill, so you have that to your advantage as well. So we'll be going down into 3rd gear, and you see we're only just clipping the curb here. You basically want to take as little curb as possible. You want to ideally aim for this white line here to go right over, because if you're taking the curb, you are turning in earlier, but you're going to be losing a lot of speed jumping over that curb. And then on the exit, you see we can just ride this curb here. You've got to be very careful not to touch the grass. That's a very easy mistake to make. And then you just got to hold your steering consistent. As you make around the turn, you got to open up. And then you can use this outside curb here to its fullest. Now coming down to Murray's corner, the final corner, we're going to be looking to brake around the 100 board on the right there, or the last little yellow marker here for the pit entrance. Either marker is fine. Personally, I use the inside on the left here because you're already looking to the inside. It's a little easier than looking quite far wide here, but do whatever works for you. We're going to be going down into 2nd gear, heavy braking once again, and if you'll notice, the track actually goes out a bit. It turns to the right a bit before turning left. You want to actually make your car follow that line. You can see I'm actually starting out a little wide here, but I'm braking, and by the time I get here, I'm right along on this line because I was aiming for that. And then once you're bringing it down, you want to avoid hitting this curb, obviously. It's a very terrible curb to hit. And then as soon as you're getting around the corner here, you see as I'm putting throttle on now, I'm opening up the steering. Very important, because this is a very tricky corner, especially at high temp and with full fuel. It's very easy to make the car go round, but you have to open up the steering very early and just aim for this curb here. Obviously, it's definitely a possibility you'll run onto the grass there, but if your tires touch that grass a little bit, as long as it's like both tires, both right tires, you should be fine. But if you're just clipping it with your rear right, then you're done. So just one more time, braking hard, release. Now open up the steering early, use that curb, and then that's a race lap at Bathurst.